Mr. Kakoulides' short story time. Introduction. What we have in this book is all my stories and illustrations I ever written for the glory of God. May it be enjoyed and a blessing to everyone who reads it. You will find the stories of the book Seeking God, inspirational Christian short stories, and many more. Chapter 01: A Puppy Story. A Puppy Story. There was once a female dog who gave birth to 2 puppies in a pound. Within a few weeks, the family was separated to different families. One puppy was taken by a little girl who named her dog Poochie, and the other some old grumpy man who named his dog Spike. And the mother, in seeing her 2 puppies gone, escaped the pound to go search for her 2 missing lads. Poochie was loved by the little girl whose family had bought him, and grew up spoiled, high class, and never missing a meal. Spike grew up, not loved, beaten, and abused. And when given a chance, left his home and took the streets. Meanwhile, the puppy's mother searched the street day and night and searched for her 2 puppies who was now grown. Spike became skilled at walking the streets and at times eating food from the trash to survive. Though at times he was hungry, but he knew freedom and became hateful to humans, saying, "All humans are evil, can't be trusted, has destroyed my family, and I know this to be true." While Poochie was always warm on cold days and cool on hot days, never missing food but not free at home. But at times Poochie felt bored and wondered to himself, "I wonder how it feels to be free." One day Poochie looked outside the window and seeing a dog who looked just like him, but dirty, eating from his trash. At this, Poochie took his head outside the window and began to bark. "Why are you eating from my trash? Who gave you such a right, and who are you?" In response, the other dog replies, "My name is Spike. What is yours, you prisoner of society? And I am trying to find food to survive. While you stay in your prison, I enjoy freedom." Poochie replies, "Freedom from a house, I wonder how that feels. Can we switch places for a day or 2 or maybe a week? I love my home, but am just a little curious how your life might be." Spike answered, "Does your human beat dogs? Because if she or he does, I will make them part of my meal." Poochie replies, "My human loves me, feeds me, showing me love and caring for me. But you hurt my human, you will have a problem with me." So the 2 decided to switch places for a day, then a week. In time they both became friends and continued to make the switch time and time again. It was fate that brought them together. On the first day, Spike was taking a bath before the switch so the plan might work. Because Poochie said, "Buddy, for the plan to work you need to bathe, for you stink." In reply, Spike answered, "My smell is me, but for a high-class meal I am willing to bathe." Now Poochie was in the streets, walking without a leash and digging in trash cans and saying, "This is fun. Now I know what to do whenever I want out." And Spike was at home, loved for the first time, fed and groomed, saying, "This is the life, and not all humans are as bad as I thought. Now I know what to do, to once in a while to feel loved and get a meal without having to go in filth." As Poochie was in the streets one day, a strange old lady dog looked at him, seeking to smell him, and said, "Son, is that you?" Poochie replied, "I feel I know you, but from where I don't know." In reply she said, "I am your mother, and you are one of my missing sons. It was to you when I gave birth long ago." Poochie, in tears, cried, "Mama, I dreamed of this day. And I think I know where we can find my brother, and his name is Spike. We switch places time and time again." As they walked home, Spike looked outside the window and said, "Who is that old lady I see with Poochie, my buddy? I feel a bond with her. Like I know her." As his mother yelled his name, Spike jumped outside the window and yelled, "Mama, it must be you, I know." At this, the family was united in a weird way. Tears of joy for the first time was seen. Now what to do with Mama, because she was old and needed a home. So they decided to wait for the human little girl who was now an adult. Would she let them all live together, or would she say, "It is time to go"? As she opened the door and saw the family united, she stood in awe and knew in her heart the family needs to stay, so they all stood. And the moral of the story is, everything that happens is not by chance. For God has His ways of making everything work out good in the end. Chapter 02: A Healing Prayer Answered. A very sick man prayed to the Lord for a healthy body. "O Lord, give me a healthy body. I'm tired of being sick, overweight, having problems breathing, and in pain all day," he said in his prayers to God. As he prayed, he never imagined what was to happen. The next day his car broke down and now he had to walk to work over 3 miles to go and come back. Since he couldn't afford to take a taxi, walking to work was his only choice in the matter. Why is this happening to me? I can't walk so much, I have to catch my breath every couple steps, but if I have to go through it I will, he said. His favorite restaurants all closed down, all that was left was a salad bar restaurant and a fruit cart next to his job. Oh no Philly's cheesesteak, pizza, stromboli, pork chops, barbecue ribs, rice and beans. He saw himself losing weight and some of the workers quit in his job, so he had to work extra hours than usual. Why me, Lord? What did I do to deserve this? He said. At the end of the year, he found out all those bad situations work out for his prayer to be answered. I am not gasping for air when I walk, I am not in pain anymore, he said as he rejoiced at his answered prayer. The moral of the story is God hears our prayers, and every situation is going on in our lives is happening, so our prayers, if it is His will, may happen, including those situations we don't want to go through. Chapter 03, Fearing What Should Not Be Fear. Living in a 3-story house all alone and waking from my sleep by a sound that I heard, of a squeal and a squeak, thinking it was something to be feared, I got up from my bed. Hearing drums like those of a tribe or that of a church, then finding out it was just my heart beating strongly because of fear. As I grab the candle and make my way down the stairs, I see a shadow of a tall man, and I start to shake, then finding out it was just my shadow on the wall and nothing to fear. As I keep on walking down the stairs I hear squeak, and I start to tremble with fear, then all suddenly realize it was just a loose board on the floor. As I make my way to the first floor, and I wonder why I had all this fear. And I see something I thought should not be feared. Fat rat with a t-shirt saying Fat Rats Matters named Joe Biden stuck in a hole on the wall on my kitchen wall. So I softly with my finger pluck him in, and I hear him saying, "Sorry if I woke you up, my friend. I was hungry, and thought I could find here something to eat, even if it is not much to bother a piece of cheese." So I open the refrigerator door, and break a piece of cheese, and give it to him. And say good night, my friend. So leaving to the stairs and going straight to bed, I fall asleep very soundly, thinking there is nothing to fear, not knowing what I just done. The little fat rat was a member of the Fat Rats Matters gang, a very dangerous criminal, who I called him my friend, and showed him where I hid my treasures of food. He told his gang of the food that I had in my refrigerator. Then they planned that night to raid my house. So they robbed me blind, and did not leave a string but only a letter that said, "Sorry, I have a family to feed, my friend." So the moral of the story is many times we fear things we ought not to fear, and we don't fear the things that we ought to fear. Chapter 04, Have a Understanding Heart. There was once a bee who flew around a other beehive that was not of his kind, but belonged to a different kind of bee. The other bees saw him that he did not look like them, so they avoided him and refused to speak to him. Others pushed him to the side and said, "Move, you don't belong with us," and then not let him say a word. The bee yelled, "But I have something important to say, please have a understanding heart." But in return they would answer, "We don't want to hear you, you don't belong with us. Now nicely go away or you will be taken out in a most rude way." The bee yelled, "My beehive was taken down by a bear, and he said tomorrow he's going to take your beehive down. Please listen to what I have to say." The other bees mocked at what was said, and laughed at him, not wanting to believe. One of the bees saw he was serious in what he was saying, and said maybe he is right in what he is saying. But the other bees said, "This beehive have been here for almost a year, it will never be taken down. Don't listen to him, for he is not of our kind." So the bee was told to leave, along with the other who believed in what was said. As the bees left in tears from the group which did not want to believe, within an hour a bear came, took down the beehive, and ate the honey with the bees who stood. So like this bee, we are in this world, but we are not of its kind. Also we are giving warnings to others to come to Jesus, and have an understanding heart, because there is a hell which none would desire to come in to burn in it. And even if they refuse to listen, that doesn't change the fact of what will soon take place if they don't come to Jesus. Chapter 05, Lots of Carrots. There was once a rabbit who wanted to be rich and said, "If I had so much carrots I would share them with those in need, I would not be selfish, and I would still make time for God." One day as she walked to the church she saw a basket with a letter and a carrot inside that said, "Take a carrot and then take a other one." But when you had enough, throw the basket to the nearest pond. Then you may eat of the carrots, but you may share with others at any time, but remember, make time for God. If you don't throw the basket to the nearest pond, you won't be able to enjoy the carrots, so make sure you do what I said. As she took the carrot that was in the basket, she saw that a other would appear. So she decided that day to skip church, and said, later, after I have enough carrots, I will make time for God. As she was busy at home taking carrots from the basket, a knock of a poor homeless squirrel came at the door. Miss Rabbit, can today you spare me a carrot? I am very hungry, and you always there as a friend to help those who are hungry, even me. Where in response Miss Rabbit answered, not today, I haven't gone to the market to buy not even a carrot for me. But maybe a other day you may come, now leave. As she shut the door and went back to pull more carrots, she was stricken in her conscience that she did nothing she had promised she would do. But the love for more carrots was stronger than the conscience that she had. So that day, pulling carrots from the basket, she herself did not eat, and sleep went away from her eyes. She was selfish and cruel. She had already pulled out more than 1,000,000 carrots, but yet wanted more. But again her conscience started to bother her, this time stronger than before, and she said, I need to throw the basket in the pond, for I have enough, and I need to do what I said. So going to the pond, she threw the basket, but part of her not wanting to let go, she fell in the pond with the basket. And then she was drowning. Mr. Squirrel saw her from afar and ran and jumped in the water to save her, and told her to let go of the basket, for I can only save you. But she said, I need the basket as well. In response he said again, I can only save you. At hearing this, she let go. And as she was on land safe and sound, she felt relief that the selfishness and greed was no more. So she invited Mr. Squirrel and many others to have a feast with all the carrots that she had. Then they all went to church as she promised she would. So the moral of the story is, keep your promises, remember not to be selfish, and make time for God when all your prayers are answered, so it won't be a curse instead of a blessing. Chapter 06. If the earth and heaven could speak. If the earth and heaven could speak to each other and compare what one has and the other doesn't, what would they say? The following is what they will say. Earth, O beauty of heaven above, what do you have more than what I can give and replace with thee? Heaven, though many treasures are here, which all that you have can't compare, there is one here which is hold more dear above all. This one you didn't want him even in a small inn, but we want the more of him above all that we hold so dear. He came to you below and died because you despised. Earth, there are many who died and we despised. What is so important about the one you speak above the rest? Heaven, the one I speak is above all, for he created all, because he loved all, and died for all who would believe would receive, but few received because of the blindness of thee. Earth, I think you speak of Jesus, I believe, a good man, a king, a son, a prophet, a teacher, and a God. Heaven, I see you are still blinded, for you speak of him as a good man, when he was the only good man among thee. You speak of him as a king when he is the King of kings, which all kings are to bow. You speak of him as a son when he was and is the only begotten Son of God, and all who believe in him will be children of God. You speak to him as a prophet when he was the one prophet who was like Moses, who was to come and was better than him, and all prophets combine. You speak of him as a teacher, but you refuse to obey when he says he is the only way. You speak of him as a God, when he is the second among the three, which is the only true God. Earth, we hold him dear as well, that is why we wish his name in profanity, only we wish him not to be in our families, school, work, politics, bars, corners, churches, mines, religion and things, for what we did to him when he came we cannot bear, and what he came to do we cannot receive. Heaven, but you still have echoes of him calling in the streets, calling those to come to him, echoes of those you despise. When you kill one, many take their place as an early teacher among them, said the blood of the saints is the seed of the church. Earth, oh yes, then we cannot stand. When one falls and dies we rejoice only to find many more took its place. They are weeds which do not want to die. They are called Christians, after him who they call Christ. They only speak of him in everything they do, and them we despise as much or more than he, for when he came he only stood in one place, but they spread as fire to a forest, and as a rain cloud throughout the land. And when we could we kill them before their time, only to find it was their time. Heaven, who you despise we hold in esteem above all, for they are his seed for whom he came, and died, and will one day be his bride. Earth, so in nothing we can agree. I believe my beauty is better than thee, for we block many from going to thee, we keep them busy with worldly things which are called the things of this world, which are many kinds of lust, drugs, vain dreams, money, false gods, self-righteousness and more, which those who are here hold dear, blindly doing its will, and after that we take them and have them in our oven below. As they scream, yell, we don't care, then we remind them of him who they did not want to receive, and we don't care if there they call on his name, because their fire and worms of pain is all our joy. Chapter 07. The Man Who Fell in Love, Married and Divorced Himself. The man who fell in love, married and divorced himself. There was once a man named Steve who was a narcissist, that means one who is very crazily in love with themselves, who see the world revolving around them. While growing up in school, he believed every compliment that was given to another was for himself and not for the other. But he wondered why his name wasn't mentioned then, imagine, so the other people won't feel bad that they weren't as good as me. In one occasion at class, the teacher gave a compliment to one of the students which wasn't Steve, and after class he went to the teacher said, I know the compliment was for me, but so Tom wouldn't feel bad you mentioned his name. No, I meant it was for Tom, replied the teacher. And Steve replied, Teacher, so long and you don't know my name is not Thomas, it is Steve. And before the teacher could say another word, Steve walked out the door with his pride saying, Poor teacher, who's having problems remembering my name. As the years passed by, Steve never had a girlfriend, for he did not want no one to compete with him. One day he decided he wanted to get married, and thinking who should be the lucky lady, he said to himself, None is worthy of me, so he decided to marry himself. He went to a pastor, and he said to the pastor, I want to get married. The pastor said, Where is the lucky lady? Steve replied, No lady here, just me and me. The pastor said, There needs to be two to get married. And Steve replied, I am good enough for two. And now say the words, and I reply, I do. Before the pastor could continue, Steve replied, I do, and leaving the church thought to himself he was married to himself. The first day Steve told himself, I want you to do the dishes while I cook. But after cooking and eating felt lazy and didn't want to do the dishes, so he argued with himself, You lazy you, I married you so you could be a help. But you do nothing all day but eat while another cooks. The next day Steve woke up late for his job, and he blamed himself. And said, Why you did not wake me up? And he answered himself, What do you think, I'm your maid? And the argument was so intense that he wanted to file for divorce and divorce himself. So the divorce came and went. And he found out that he couldn't leave the person who he married, for it was himself. Day by day he saw all his imperfections and noticed how sinful he truly was. Till one day he yelled in tears, Who will save me from this person who I am? And seeing a paper on the floor with the plan of salvation, got saved and became a Christian. Now Steve only thinks the world revolves on one man, and that is not himself but Jesus, who saved him and is altogether perfect and lovely. Chapter 08. The Ugliest Man One Can See. The ugliest man one can see. There was once a man who was so ugly that on the day he was born, the doctor, instead of slapping the baby at first sight, ran out the door. And even though he came out the womb, she was told, It won't be a sin to kill such a ugly child. But yet to his mother he was the most beautiful baby she had ever saw, and she would not dream of killing her little angel. In school no one wanted to be around him, so he sat alone, played alone, ate lunch alone, and grew up pretty much alone, but not without his mother's and father's love, who while they was alive showed much love. But the day came, as we all have to in one time pass away from one life here below, to heaven above. So the father was the first to pass away, and he said before he passed away to his son, You will be a king, I don't know how, but I was promised you would. Then his mother as well had to say goodbye. Before her death his mother said, In time he will be given a beautiful wife and many beautiful children I saw, who will love you as you are, for I prayed to God it to be so. He lived in a house in a forest away from society, hidden from the world, because people seem not understand why a mother and father should keep such an ugly child. Next to his house he kept a garden, the most beautiful garden one could ever known. And next to the garden was buried his mom and dad. And every day he will go and take care of the garden, cry for his mom and dad. Many miles away there was a palace of a king and queen who had a beautiful daughter, which many men dreamed of marrying, but none good enough for her. So the king and the queen sent his daughter to another kingdom, where they knew she will find her prince. But trusting the guards, they did not know they planned to kidnap her and not take her to her destination. The last words the king and the queen said to their daughter was, "I spoke to King Frank, he has a handsome son, and I arranged the marriage go, and I'll see you within a year, hopefully married with a prince that will be a king. Love you, my daughter, and I'll see you very soon." As the princess left with her kidnappers, that took her by another path, and threw away forest where they imagined no one but they would be, not knowing the ugliest man there would be. They tied her up, blindfolded her, and let her scream. But no one heard her except from a distance, the ugliest man one could ever be. As the men talked about how much they will receive from the king and queen to see their lovely daughter once again, the ugliest man was now approaching to save someone who you imagine needed to be saved, and not expecting a reward for what he wants to do. As he approached the area, he yelled out, "Let her go." One of the knights, who was a kidnapper, was the first to draw his sword to the ugliest man, and as he was going to attack, he tripped on a rock and fell on his sword. As this was happening, she knew she was being saved, and her heart pounded in love for the man who was willing to risk his life for a woman he did not know. Another knight grabbed the sword and approached the ugliest man one can ever know. As he was about to swing, his heart stopped, and would not beat no more because of fear of the ugliest man one can ever see. The third knight said he is a warlock or some demon of some kind. At this the ugliest man felt offended, and grabbing a sword ran towards him, and the knight with other knights running and screaming ran away. As they ran, they left the princess all alone. But not alone, there was the ugliest man who untied her and let her go. The blindfold was the last thing he removed. Before he removed the blindfold, he told her, "Don't scream, for I am the ugliest man you can ever see," and seeing him she saw the most handsome man one can ever see. So as the mother and father of the most handsome man one can ever know said, he became a future king, with a beautiful wife and beautiful children one can ever see. So the moral of the story is, don't judge a person by their appearance or what you see, for that may be the most beautiful person you might see and know. Chapter 09. The Painting. The Painting. An artist begins to paint, and he dabs the color black. The brush replies, "Why black, why sorrow, why the pain on what seems to be a white canvas?" The artist replies to the brush, "Let me paint without complaining. What you don't understand, you will in time, when the masterpiece is done." The artist begins to dab on the color red on the canvas. Now the canvas complains, "I don't like this color, it reminds me of blood." The artist replies, "When all the colors are put together, you will see a grand design." The artist begins to dab on the color gray, and starts grabbing the other colors. At a moment the work looks terrible, and as those who are walking by start staring at the painting and start criticizing before the painting is done, they are told by the artist, "I am not done, the work is not finished." A light blue is dabbed on the painting. And now what seems to be a terrible darkness of random colors starts taking a design that leaves everyone speechless and amazed at the artwork, which many thought was nothing but shame. If one would look at this artwork before he's done, one might criticize as well, and say this artist has no idea what he's painting. He puts everything all wrong. The picture is all wrong without knowing what it was intended to be. But one does not see the picture that is in the artist's mind till his painting is complete. And so likewise God is making a painting, a marvelous artwork, that in time we will see that every dab of color was in its right place. Every tear we went through, every heart of pain, is working for an amazing grand design. A painting so incredible that if one could paint, one would not come close to what God has painted with the colors of our lives. Chapter 10. The Giraffe Learns a Lesson. The Giraffe Learns a Lesson. There was a giraffe who made fun of everyone, and could find something funny in everyone's appearance. He laughed at the turkey with its skinny legs. "Look at your skinny legs," he said, "a toothpick has more meat than you." He laughed at the lions, who female lions are the main hunters. "Wow, you are so lazy, you male good-for-nothing lions who have your female do all the work, and you expect to be the king of the jungle when you can't hunt your prey." He laughed at the hippo, "You are so fat." He laughed at the elephant, "You have big ears and a long nose." He laughed at the mouse, "You're so small." And lastly, the other animals couldn't stand it no more, decided to play on him a prank, so they ordered a mirror of great size, and they said, "Let's see what he'll say when he looks at himself." So leaning on the tree was an enormous mirror, which the animals knew he was going to look at eventually, because that was his favorite tree to eat from. And they were right. As he was eating the leaves from the tree, he stared at this person who he saw, not knowing it was himself. He laughed at his tongue, which was black, and said, "What freak of nature are you?" He laughed at his neck for being so long. "Hey buddy, you're the ugliest person I know, look at that long neck," he said. He laughed so hard he fell on the floor. And after a long laughter, he noticed that the one he was laughing at was laughing too. And that made him mad. "What are you laughing at?" he said. "You are the ugliest animal in the forest." As the animals looked at him, they started laughing at him. And he told them, "Why are you laughing at me? This strange-looking animal that just came new in the forest is leading you guys astray, is not fun to be laughed at." And the giraffe cried. Then the animals of the forest said, "That new, funny, ugly-looking animal in the forest is you because you are looking at a mirror." From there on, the giraffe said, "I will never laugh at another animal again." And as the giraffe went to drink water, he saw a fish in the lake, and was about to giggle for a second to make fun at what he just saw, then reminding himself it wasn't fun to be laughed at, withstood himself from giggling, and said to the fish, "Do you want to be my friend?" Which the fish gladly replied, "Oh yes, because you are friendliest person I know." At that moment the giraffe learned another lesson, that it feels good to give a other person a compliment than making them feel sad. From there on the giraffe found something nice to say to everyone. He said to the turkey, "You have lovely feathers," and he said to the lion, "You are a ruler and know how to lead," and he said to the elephant and the hippo, "You are strong." And he told the mouse, "You are a little gymnast, keep it up and you'll be in the Olympics." The moral of the story is always look at the good qualities of others, then to look at their faults. Chapter 11, Reverend Wolf and his sheep. Reverend Wolf and his sheep. There was once a group of sheep who followed their shepherd wherever he would lead them. They knew he loved them. They were fed, and they were never thirsty. One day, one of the sheep named Timmy stepped out of the flock to find a other shepherd who would be better than his current pastor. He thought he would find one who would give him better grass, cleaner water, and show more love and understanding than his shepherd. As he was walking around trying to find another flock where he could gather, he met on his way a Mr. Wolf who was very hungry, and also had a family of cubs who were hungry as well. Timmy, when seeing Mr. Wolf, asked him, "Do you know where I can find a good church?" And the wolf replied, "I am a pastor and I guarantee you my church is the one for you. We are having a revival meeting of new teaching you don't want to miss. When can I visit?" asked Timmy. "Come tonight and after service we'll have a meal together," replied the wolf. "If you have a family and friends, invite them. We are such a loving church. You could tell the love in our church. We love tasty sheeps, we love other sheeps like ourselves," Timmy replied. "You're very weird-looking sheep and shepherd, but who am I to judge you? Something is different about you," Mr. Wolf replied, "because I hungry for truth." So Timmy left and came that night. And the service was grand. The Reverend Wolf started preaching, and he preached about the need to love other sheep so much that one will witness to them of the coming wrath which was to come, and the safest place was his church. As Timmy looked at the other sheeps in the congregation who was wolves in disguise, he said to himself, "This is the church for me, and this is true revival." So after service Mr. Wolf said to Timmy, "Are you hungry, for it is time for us to eat?" "Yes, and tomorrow I'll invite my family to come," replied Timmy. The wolf had planned to eat Timmy that night, but gave a signal to the other wolves, "Let's wait for tomorrow's service, for after that we'll have a feast. It's better to eat a group of sheep than to just eat one." So they ate that night carrots, beets and grass. One of the wolves said to himself, "This food ain't that bad, but it's missing roast lamb." Timmy enjoyed the fellowship and went home. At home he convinced his mom, his dad, brothers and sisters to go with him to Reverend Wolf Church the next day. He told them of the food they ate. It did not just consist of grass but other vegetables as well. He said the sermon was grand. And the love of the members was amazing. Timmy also invited his friends, telling them the same things. All this happened while Mr. Wolf and his family was preparing to have a feast filled with roast lamb when the group of sheep arrived. Night came, and now Reverend Wolf was on the altar preaching again. The lambs and the wolves sat together. One could not tell who was a wolf and who was a lamb because the wolves were in disguise. Mr. Wolf, or Reverend Wolf, preached again a convincing sermon about a need for sheep to trust the wolves and the wolves to love the sheep, calling them brothers and sisters. The sermon was so grand that some of the sheep, along with the wolves, came weeping in front of the altar for prayer. While all this was happening, the true shepherd of the sheep was counting his sheep, and notice a number of them was missing among his flock, 8 of them to be exact, and wondering where they were, went out to look for them. Calling them but no answer. Well, the service was almost over, but before they ended, Reverend Wolf called for the door of the cave church to be locked. And said, "Now it's time for the feast." And calling for all the wolves to unmask themselves, they jumped and prayed at the sheep. While Timmy was left for last because it was only right because of him, they were able to have that feast. When all the sheep was eaten, and the wolves surrounded Timmy ready to eat him, the voice of the shepherd was heard, who, hearing Timmy screaming, broke the door of the cave, started to shoot the wolves. Timmy was saved, but his family and friends was not. All this happened because of Timmy's desire to leave the true shepherd for a false one, named Reverend Wolf. Timmy, while saved, was never the same. Losing his family and friends caused him great grief he was never able to recover from because his desire for the new teachings of Reverend Wolf. So the moral of the story is, don't go after new teaching to replace the truth, for you don't just hurt yourself, but those who you love as well. Chapter 12. Prepare to be shattered and broken. Prepare to be shattered and broken. Once there was a young man who prayed loudly in church and said, "Lord, I want to be used by you to spread your word all around the world." A very old couple invited him for dinner that night. As the old lady was passing the plates, the young man went to take the plate from the old lady, and the plate fell and shattered into pieces. They spread everywhere, and even in the kitchen pieces of the glass could be seen. The young man was shocked. The elderly couple looked at him and smiled, then said, "If you want to be used by God to spread His word all around the world, prepare to be shattered, because a whole plate does not spread like a shattered and broken one does." Brothers and sisters, sometimes God has to break us and shatter us to use us, so the glory could be to Him and not to us. In our wholeness and prideness, we are useless towards God. For God cannot receive glory when man is puffed up in pride. Look at all those in history. Samson defeated more Philistines when he was blinded than when he could see. Beethoven composed his greatest music when he was almost totally deaf, like the last 5 piano sonatas, the Missa Solemnis, the 9th Symphony with its choral finale, and the last 5 string quartets. Chapter 13. The Pig That Became a Man. The Pig That Became a Man. There was once a pig whose biggest desire was to become a human being. He would dream and say to himself, "Oh, how I will love to become a man. How I will love to wear clothing, to see the world the way they see it, to eat the food which they eat, to live inside a house instead of a barn, to drink tea and eat biscuits, to watch television and hear the radio, be productive with my hands, instead of eating mud with worms all day, and when I am fat enough to be in someone's plate." One day, a scientist heard the pig say, "I want to be human," and he said to him, "I'm dealing with some chemicals that could change the DNA of an animal to a human. Would you like to be the first to try? But remember, once you are a human, you can never be a pig again." The pig happily answered without thinking twice, "Oh yes, I want to be human. I'm tired of living in filth." So the pig was injected with a needle and became in a moment's time a man. The first thing the pig did was wear clothing, which he found kind of irritating, especially on a hot weather, and desired to be loose from it. Then he heard the radio, and hearing sports, he found it to be so boring. He turned on the TV and thought to himself, "What was the point of television? I can look outside the window and see things better, which is real, and what is the points of watching something that's fake?" Now it was time for him to drink tea. As soon as it went to his mouth, it tasted like boiled water, not a tasty treat. Now it was his time to eat food. He skipped the salad and went straight for the pork, but remembering where he was once a pig, couldn't seem to chew his food. So he ate some salad for that day, but did not enjoy it one bit. As he went outside, he saw the mud with the worms and the maggots, and he said to himself, "That looks pretty good to me." Filling his hands with mud, maggots and worms, he put it in his mouth, and as it went to his mouth, vomited it out. He tried again, but once again it came out as vomit when he would put it to his lips. Even the smell was not the same, but continued making him want to puke. He was a human now with no chances of becoming a pig again. Now it was time for him to sleep on a bed. He never felt anything so soft and bothersome. He tossed and turned all night until he decided to sleep on the floor. "Oh, I want to be pig again," he cried, and yelling, "I want to be a pig again." And waking from his sleep, he found himself back in the barn with the other pigs, and it was a dream. And praising God, he was thankful that God made him a pig and not a man. So the moral of the story is, be content in whatever state you are in, for He has His reasons, because if you can't find joy in your condition now, you will not find it in any other condition you will be in. Chapter 14. One Moment of Sin. One Moment of Sin. There was once a man who was delivered from drugs through a personal relationship with Jesus. While serving the Lord, he got married with a very lovely lady, got a high-paying job. Everything seemed wonderful, and his life could not seem better, till he opened the door for one moment of sin. He figured out what harm would one needle inject in my vein would do. The only problem was, he did not know that was a used needle, used by someone who had AIDS. The next day, everything seemed normal. He went to work as usual, but did not expect a drug examination which was done on his job that day. He failed the blood test and was fired. Disappointed at just what happened, he went home. And his wife, wanting to console him at that time, romance him, and they went to bed. As he went in search of a job, he swore to himself he would never use drugs again. Around that time, his wife gave him the news that she was pregnant. He found a job weeks later, which he had to take a blood test, which came out he was HIV positive. Not knowing how to face his wife that he gave her HIV, and the baby which she carried was most likely infected, he ran away from his house and became a homeless addict which couldn't forgive himself for all the evil that one moment of sin caused. Months started to pass, and he saw a man that he knew who was his pastor. Thinking he was not going to recognize him, he passed by him, but the pastor did recognize him. And he called him by his name. He pretended he was someone else, but the pastor said, "I know you, Frank," and he turned around thinking he was going to tell him the worst. The pastor started by telling him Lisa still loves you and she wants you home. At hearing this, he told the pastor what he'd done, and the pastor said, "Lisa knows and she forgives you. Get back on your feet. We will be on your side as you get help, but I want you to know that there is someone who loves you too." Overjoyed that he was still loved by his wife, he wondered who would love me too. Then pastor answered, "Jesus loves you and he wants you back." At that, Frank fell into tears and gave back his life to Christ. Chapter 15. Waiting for something to happen. Waiting for something to happen. I was told to wait on a mountain to move. As I looked at the mountain, which size was too enormous to imagine it will move. The height seemed to touch the clouds, as I looked at the length which seemed as wide as the ocean. And I thought, this is surely impossible, this mountain will never be moved. Then I wonder at the still small voice of the one who told me to wait. I saw his hands holds the universe in its place. And for my sins they were pierced through. His words never failed in all his promises. And as I was lost in the wonder of him, I didn't notice the earth begin to shake, the mountain beginning to crumble in pieces, till it was no more. The only thing that was left was a small stone in the shape of a cross with the words, "I did more than just move a mountain." Chapter 16. Story of a Letter. Story of a Letter. An old man in his 90s wrote a letter to his beloved wife before he was to pass away, feeling the time was soon approaching, and in this letter he poured his love, but forgot to write to who it was from and who was to receive it. The letter had no address and was mailed. As the old man closed his eyes to pass to the next life which awaits us all, he thought what a surprise his wife was to receive when she received a letter from him after his passing. His wife never received the letter, and the letter was sent to a house where a woman was about to commit suicide, but before she was to drink all her sleeping pills, decided to read the strange-looking letter with no address and no sender. As she read it, she thought to herself, "This is a letter of God pouring his love towards me," and the desire to end her life was gone, so she took the letter, sealed it up, and put it again in the mail for another to be blessed as she was. The letter next visit was to a man who lost his family in a car crash and couldn't be consoled, but started taking the bottle again, for before he had his family, he was a drunk and like a dog returned to his vomit, so this man returns to his beer. As he was reading the odd letter with no address and no sender, he slammed the bottle towards the wall, fell on his knees crying to the Lord, "What I must do to be saved." And feeling a warm love by the reading of the letter, seeing the phrase, "The love of Jesus pours like rain," said, "I'm going to church." Feeling blessed by the letter, he sealed it and sent it back to the mailbox. The next person to receive this letter was an orphan who found it in the trash at the orphanage, who did not feel love for the years she was in this place, but at the reading of the letter she felt a love which she could not explain, so she kept the letter, holding it to her heart as she would hug her mom and dad who was nowhere to be seen. The letter kept her through those years of misery till she was old, and before her death, she rewrote the words of the letter, and had over 1 million copies sent with no address and no sender. The words of this letter affecting lives after lives, touching people in their most found need, showing them of a love that goes beyond understanding. And like this letter, the Bible is a love letter from God to us, telling us about His love towards us in words which apart from it, cannot be explained. Chapter 17: The Waiting Queen. The Waiting Queen. 10 maidens were chosen to compete so one could be the queen to a king which no one knew. Only what one could read from a book which was ascribed to this king was known. One of the maidens, in seeing the length of the book and opening the first pages, said, "His rules are way too strict," and closing the book she walked away mumbling the words, "His laws no one can keep, so why even try?" The second maiden yelled when reading the book, "There is a prophecy that the king is going to die for his subjects who can't keep the laws." At that she said, "I don't need no one to die for me. I am way too good," and slamming the book on the floor she rejected the king. The third, hearing what was said of this king, and not understanding what was said, "If his laws are too strict, moreover, he is going to die. How can I be his queen?" And sitting down as one ponders on something profound, thought hard, then not wanting to soak it in, said nothing, then left with a confused mind. The fourth stood reading, as she was reading a novel with a great ending, her heart pounding as she fell in love with the story, the king and his laws. "I'm not leaving any time soon," she said, "and here I stand waiting for my king." The fifth mocked her, "There must be something wrong with your head if you decide to stay." And leaving, she laughed at her, calling her a fool for staying and not leaving like the rest. The sixth said, "I am staying too, let's see who can wait the longest for the king. For my heart pounds for him as yours." The seventh and eighth maidens set on reading a little more than those who was previous there. We are told, "If we do not forsake all, we cannot be his disciples." That we have to leave all to be with this king. We love this present world too much to stay. So leaving, but still feeling a respect for those who stood and feeling a fondness for the king, left in tears, as one who is torn between two lovers but choosing the world rather than the priceless king. So the ninth and the 10th also decided to stay, but as the king lingered in his coming, the 6th and the 9th fell asleep in their waiting, and seeing he wasn't going to come any time soon, said, "Let's go home, for the desire to sleep is too strong, and that king is not coming any time soon." So the 4th and the 10th stood waiting for their king, their heart beating for the king who died for them. But only one could be queen. The 10th started singing hymns in honor of the king, but then felt shame and embarrassment as the subjects began to stare at what she did. So quietly she sat, but still thinking of him. And the 4th, imaging herself as queen with the king, began to sing with no shame as she thought hard of her king. When the subjects started to stare, she sang louder. Some of the subjects mocked, saying, "And she thinks she will be queen. It's been 2,000 years that passed since he died, rose and ascended to heaven, like he will come any time soon." When hearing the mocking, the 10th joined in, and also mocked the waiting queen. At the same time, some in the crowd began to throw stones at the suffering queen. In pain and suffering she wept, but her love for her king was like a fire that could not be quenched. "If I would die, I would die for my king who died for me." As everything seemed over, as the subjects all started hurting the queen, a loud sound of a trumpet was heard, followed by a loud voice that caused everyone to tremble, saying, "Here comes the king for his waiting and ready bride." As she looked at her bloody garment, for in her mind this was no way to meet her king, she saw it become whiter than fresh snow on a snowing day. And at that moment she knew without any doubt she was the future queen, who stood waiting with no shame for her king. And like this waiting queen, the church waits for her King Jesus Christ. Even so, come Lord Jesus. Hallelujah. Chapter 18: Doing what is right. Doing what is right. There was a lady who was working an office job, which she was told to tell lies for her boss a number of times. The moment came where she couldn't do it anymore because it started to bother her conscience as her walk with the Lord got closer, and she told her boss, "I am a Christian and I can't tell lies for you anymore." So he told her, I am sorry to see you let go, but I'll call you if a other job is available where you don't have to lie." It seemed to her when he told her this, it was nothing more than a mockery, because she could see the smirk on his face, and she knew his ears usually turns red as he starts telling lies, for she's seen this before. The days passed and she was happy she did what was right, but then weeks started to pass. Moreover, she couldn't find a job as the bills and rent was soon to be due. Thoughts came to her head. Should I had kept sinning against my conscience and God so I could keep this job? Where is God when I do what is right? What she didn't know, God was at work in what she couldn't see. At that moment the phone rang. To her surprise, it was her former employer who told her, "We need an honest person working for us who can do accounting. And I had you in mind, seeing you are a real Christian and won't let us down. We will pay you 3 times the amount you used to get pay if you say yes." Chapter 19. The nicest friend one can ever know. The nicest friend one can ever know. A little bird, which I heard before but never truly listened, told me there is no one or nobody nicer than Jesus. The little bird voice sounded louder as the little preacher spoke the gospel, so I shut the window, not wanting to hear the little creature message for you and me. Then I looked to find a nicer person than Jesus if I could. I tried money, but it flew away and never said goodbye. I looked in fame, but found only gossip in disguise. I looked to lust and drugs, but found only an empty, meaningless void which can never be filled inside. And lastly, the little bird, which I did not want to hear, was in front of my window, knocking and ready to be heard. There's nobody nicer than Jesus, who will fill the void, never leave you or let you go. Who paid the price for you and me. Though I knew the message to be true, and wonder why I withstood so long a message that feels so good, that Jesus is the nicest friend one can ever know. Chapter 20. Atheist versus God. There was once an atheist who told his daughter to write on a piece of paper, "God is nowhere," and his daughter wrote, "God is now here." He did not know what his daughter wrote, so he told his daughter, "I want you to read it real loud to me, and you keep on repeating the words. Even if I tell you to stop, you will continue till you can't no more." His daughter repeated, "God is now here, God is now here, God is now here." He yelled at her to stop, but she yelled louder and her voice prevailed. At the hearing of this, the man ran out the door and saw a poster on the wall of a politician that read, "I am now here." As he left from there and started walking, he saw and heard a couple talking among themselves, which the man told his wife, "That was the past, but I am now here." By now the words, "God is now here," repeated over and over in his head. Covering his ears didn't shut the words that was in his head. For God was showing himself to be real to this man, who all his life tried to suppress the existence of God. Standing at a crossroad where the streets I am and here meets, not knowing the name of the street, he asked an elderly man, "Where am I?" And the man replied, "I am here," and running again, but hitting a pole while he was rubbing his head. A teen with a boombox passed by him, which by the way was hearing a rap where the rapper named GD was repeating the words, "I am here, I am here, I am here." And his background singers would saying, "GD is here, GD is here," which made the man run as quickly as he could to the quietest place he could think of, which was the park. And seeing a bench in the park, the man sat down, and an elderly woman sat next to him. And seeing the old lady pulling out a book, he told her to read him something, not knowing it was the Bible. She read, "I was sought by those who did not ask for me, I was found by those who did not seek me. I said, here I am, to a nation that was not called by my name." Isa 65:1. At the hearing of this, the man fell on his knees to God and accepted Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. The moral of the story is, God does many things to get our attention, and even if we play the deaf or the blind to try to suppress the truth of his existence, we are only kidding ourselves, and one day you won't be able to run any longer. Chapter 21. Little Girl's Dream. There was once a little girl who loved her baby brother very much, but since her parents were divorced, she would pray that her parents would never gotten that divorce. Then suddenly she fell asleep and had a dream. In that dream her parents didn't get divorced, and she was very happy, till she realized her brother was nowhere in sight. She looked everywhere for him, but she couldn't find him. She asked her parents about her brother, and they said, "What brother? You are our only child." And she wondered why she couldn't find him, and her parents knew nothing about her baby brother. Till she remembered that her brother was her half-blood brother from her stepdad. And waking up from her sleep, from there on she was happy that God allowed there to be a divorce so the one who she loved so dearly should be born. Chapter 22 Words of a Clown. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but sometimes a smile in a picture could be a frown in the inside. Even in laughter the heart may sorrow, and the end of mirth may be grief. Prov 14:13 NKJV. Words of a Clown. Looking at my mirror I looked and saw a clown, which laughed and made everyone laugh who came in contact with him. There is one who has joy, one who sees him may say. He knows how to laugh and make them laugh. As I continue to look, and wipe the makeup away. When everyone left I took a picture from my pocket, and as I looked, I started to weep. One never knows what is behind everyone's mask. Only God and the one who wears it can tell. Like a clown many times we are wearing a mask. But thank God in His presence, there is room for a frown that waits for the morning to smile. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Peace 30-5 NKJV. Chapter 23 The Spider and the Fly. The Spider and the Fly. There was once a group of flies flying around near a spider's web. "Come closer," said the spider to one of the flies as he flew around the web. The fly said, "I will not be trapped by you," and he flew away. So the spider tried to catch another fly saying, "Come closer and we can be friends." But the other fly said that he'd never trust a black widow, and flew away. One of the flies heard the other fly call the spider a widow, and knowing the Bible, she wanted to follow her religion in a pure, undefiled way. So she said to herself, "I will help this widow in need." The little fly flew closer to the web, and the spider threw its web and caught her. The spider was ready to eat her, but before she did, she wanted to know why the fly had come so close to the web. The fly told her, "You are a widow in need, so I did what was needed. I will pray for your soul so that you can find a good husband and be a widow no more." At that moment, another spider got too close to the black widow's web, and she caught him. The widow now had a husband. Seeing that her prayer for the widow had been answered, the little fly rejoiced. The widow was filled with compassion for the fly, and she released her unharmed. The fly knew that it always pays to do what is right, even if it threatens your life. Chapter 24 I Love You. I love you. Once upon a time, there was a man with no love in his heart. His wife, kids, or even the dog did not find any bond with him over the years. His bitterness towards his family was so intense that his wife could not remember the last time she had heard the 3 words, "I love you," from him. Therefore she prepared herself for 4 magical words, "I want a divorce," or if that was not going to happen, the least she was expecting to hear were 2 dreadful yet comforting words, "He's dead," from her kids and in-laws one day. Without love, things were so bad for the family that the kids had to watch TV quietly without uttering a word while quelling their laughs. The dog also had learned to bark in silence. They did it to avoid listening to his awful words filled with cursing, hate, anger, and rage. One day, his wife went to his office to give him food. He ate that piece of chicken, which his wife had brought while still managing to curse and shout at her. Suddenly he choked and fell like a dead man on the floor. As he opened his eyes, he saw the judge of heaven who asked him, "Why should I let you in?" As the man thought hard for reasons to be let into heaven, he heard the sound of those being tortured in hell. He thought about how he'd treated his mom, dad, wife, kids, and even the dog. The tears welled in his eyes and fell like droplets, hitting the clouds of heaven. He also heard voices and prayers from his wife and kids pleading to Jesus Christ to give him a second chance. When he listened to their incredible kindness, he said, "Lord, I should not be let into heaven. Hell is my place, for I don't even deserve to be saved by grace, and I don't deserve another chance. But if you give me another chance at life, I will be a different man to my wife, mom, kids, and even the dog. I will be a Christian and serve you as I should. I will not curse. I will read your word, pray, and go to church." As the judge saw the truthfulness of his word, blood fell from his hands and feet, and he said, "I am sending you back, and I am giving you another chance at grace, but be warned of your actions." At that moment the man woke from his sleep and saw his wife in tears and said to her, "I love you." At that the sound of those words, "I love you," she fainted and fell on the floor. When she awoke, hardly believing what she'd heard, she asked him, "What were the words you said?" He gladly repeated, "I love you. And I love the kids, the dog, and the rest of our family. I decided to be a Christian truly by heart. This time that would be different from before." So, although he had previously been a Christian, it was by name, not by action. Unfortunately, though, not all people have the same chance given to this man. We are taught in the Bible that when one dies, our judgment is assured. Yet this man, perhaps through his heartfelt repentance, was gifted with another chance to right his wrongs. Now he loves the sound of the dog barking and his children's laughter when they watch the television with the sound turned up to the fullest. And he loves his wife, who no longer entertains thoughts of divorce. The only thing she wants to hear is her husband's words when he says, "I love you," which he happily repeats every morning, noon, and night that ends. Chapter 25: Postman and the Dog. Postman and the Dog. When I got saved 21 years ago, I sat down with a retired postman who told me a story that I didn't understand at the time, but now I have found it very useful in my Christian walk. He began by telling me that the devil has no teeth. Then he went on by telling me that once while he was taking his early roots as a mailman, he suddenly saw a dog which came after him. It was a Rottweiler. He was a monster in size. He started to run, but he felt the dog was getting closer to him, ready to devour him if he could catch him. He ran for more than a mile, but the dog was still after him. Finally, he saw an alley and decided to hide there. However, it didn't prove to be a good idea. There was only one exit in the alley, and the dog was in front of it. The postman was scared to death. His biggest fear was the dog's teeth. He imagined the dog taking a chunk out of his flesh, which would wipe him out. As the dog was ready to jump on him, he barked. The postman was amazed to see that the dog had no teeth. Suddenly, all his fear was gone. He was able to think more clearly with no fear. When the postman reached the only exit, the dog tried to bite him. However, all he felt was the pressure of the dog's gums. This wasn't as scary as he had imagined in the first place. The devil is just like this dog. Therefore, we should not fear the devil, for Jesus shattered his teeth when he went on the cross and defeated death by his resurrection from the dead. Chapter 26: To Reach a Star. To reach a star. Once a little girl reached out her hand to touch a star, yet found it so far. She then reached to touch a cloud and saw that it was also too far. She reached to touch her father's beard and luckily could touch it. She understood that no matter how far it was for her to reach, there would come a time when she could reach. As the years passed by, she grew to the age of 4 and saw a mist that covered the land. So heavenly was the mist that she thought to herself, "I see the cloud coming down, it's just like my father's beard." So she touched it with her hand and said, "In time I will touch the star which, like my father's beard and the cloud, came to me." As she became older, aged 15 years, those thoughts never left her mind, "The star will come to me." Then one day, just by chance, a piece of stone from a meteor hit her yard, and she saw what she had wanted to see for so long. The moral of the story is, never lose your faith. The things that seem far from your reach might be brought to you by God. Chapter 27: The Unseen Gift. The Unseen Gift. There was once a man who was given a gift of untold worth, yet, instead of looking inside the gift box, he became captivated by the pretty string and the colored box. He looked at the wonderful colors, red, blue, purple, gold, and silver, and said, "Wow, what amazing colors." He looked and felt the texture of the box and the string. "It feels so soft," he said. "I'm happy just with the box and the string. Why do I have to waste my time to look inside?" As the years passed by, the man never opened the box to see what was inside, but instead spent all his time looking at the string and the box. In time the box decayed and moths ate the string. The gift inside remained unseen, shining its light for no one to see. All that was visible was the ugly box and moth-eaten string, both fading away. The gift is like a diamond in an ugly rock after a volcano eruption, or fossils in muddy clay. When the box and string became worse and completely lost their beauty, they were thrown away. The man had forgotten that there had been something inside. In many ways, we are like this. When we don't know what treasures we hold, we focus instead on imperfection. We do not see the perfect work of Christ in them. Chapter 28 The Rose. The Rose. There was a rose among many thorns in the garden of the king's house. The beautiful rose appeared on the very day the king's wife disappeared, and every morning the king would look out at the rose and weep. Knights were sent out day and night to search for the queen, but despite looking everywhere she could not be found. One morning, looking upon the rose, the king noticed droplets of water cloaking the petals like tears. He was deeply touched, thinking, as I weep, the rose cries with me. It was quite mysterious, especially as the season for roses was drawing to an end, yet this one continued to bloom. One day, as he went outside to look at the rose, he paused when he saw one of the maids looking at the flower. He watched as the maid talked to the rose and laughed at it. Why would a person laugh at such an amazing rose, he thought. He felt very upset by the maid's behavior. Over the next week, the king saw the maid speak often to the rose, and overheard her saying to it that she would never be a queen again. Distressed by this, he began to wonder, is this woman a witch, and is the rose my queen? His mind was in chaos as he fought off the thoughts. No, he finally decided, the maid is just crazy talking to the plant. Time passed, and the king was surprised to realize he was growing very fond of the maid. Fondness grew into attraction, and soon he planned to make her his queen. When the morning of their wedding arrived, the king saw that the rose was withering, and droplets of tears were flowing from it with a sobbing sound. He was deeply saddened to see the rose beginning to die, and wishing to hold it, he reached out his hand to pull it close, only to be cut by the thorns. Blood dripped from his hand onto the rose. The spell was broken, and the rose immediately turned back into his lost queen. Overjoyed, he asked his dear wife what had happened, and she told him that the maid was indeed a witch. Wanting the king for herself, the witch had cast a powerful spell to place the queen as a rose amongst thorns. The king sent an order to find and apprehend the maid, but she was nowhere to be found. All they did find was a black withered rose in her bedroom. When the king had shed his blood for his beloved queen, not only had the spell broken, it also had been reversed, sending the evil back to the witch and releasing his beloved wife forever. Jesus can save those in sin who are under Satan's spell. Chapter 29 They always say goodbye before they fly away. They always say goodbye before they fly away. The church was filled with people, yet as the minister gave his sermon, only a few truly listened. Had they heard the lesson, they would have learned that we need to help other people, because we never know if the person we might be helping is actually an angel in disguise. Angels, said one little boy to his sister, how can you know if someone is really an angel? His sister thought for a while, then replied, because they always say goodbye before they fly away. As the boy left the church with his family, his sister's words stayed with him. They always say goodbye before they fly away. Over the next few months the boy didn't forget, and one day he saw a man in the street, dressed in rags and obviously in need of food. He tossed the man a buck and bought him some food, something he always did now when he saw someone who needed such help. As he turned to walk home, the man said goodbye. The boy turned quickly back, eager to see if the man would fly away. But he didn't. The man stayed exactly where he was, and the boy walked away disappointed. Had he continued to watch for just a little longer, the boy would have seen the man's rags turn linen white as he flew up into the air. More years passed. However, the boy didn't forget. A teenager now, he saw a lady struggling with a heavy bag. She was trying to cross the street, right in the path of a speeding car. The boy saw what was about to happen, and he ran up to her and pushed her out of the car's path. The lady was safe, but unfortunately, the boy was not. He'd taken the full impact of the collision. As he was breathing his last breaths, he saw angels and noticed that each one was familiar. One was the lady he had just saved. Another was the homeless man in rags. There were many more, and each revealed themselves to be a person the boy had helped over the years. They smiled at him and said, "Hello." The boy had helped so many people. Not all were angels, but many were. I wonder, how many angels have you helped, thinking it was just a person in need? Chapter 30 He knows best. He knows best. An army was at war against enemy troops. A command was given by the commander, "You go at my word." The men replied, "But they are coming closer." The commander repeated his order, "At my word, we move." One of the soldiers, who was young and scared, said, "We are all going to get killed." Yet the commander's voice was calm, and he was not nervous at all as he said again, "No, we move at my word." The soldiers saw that the commander was cool and relaxed. They watched as the enemies advanced so close that they could be seen about half a block away. It looked as if it was all over for the brave soldiers. Yet as the enemy drew closer, suddenly there were great explosions, and the soldiers realized that the enemy had stepped into a minefield. Amazed, the soldiers then heard the commander say, let's go home, we won the battle." The night before the battle, the commander had some soldiers secretly set up the minefield. Like this army, we also are in a battle, and we are called to listen to and obey the command of our Commander-in-Chief Jesus Christ, even if at times it doesn't seem for the moment like a good idea. Jesus knows best, and he knows why we should do what he says because we have limited knowledge while he is unlimited. Chapter 31 The Big-Belly King. The Big-Bellied King. There was once a king who ruled his people with love. He was no beauty to look at, he had a big round belly and an oversized foot which no shoe could fit, but his heart was as gold. The people loved him because he shared all his goods. But they were embarrassed by him too. Other countries had amazing-looking kings, but their king was shameful to look at. They wished for someone handsome to rule their kingdom. So one night, they kidnapped their king and put him in the dungeon. They fed him with water and bread. In his place they put a new king, who was attractive in his appearance. From head to toe, he was handsome with no flaws at all. Yet inside his heart was of worms and mud. He didn't care about his people. He overtaxed them. He took their daughters as his wives. He took their wives as his maids. And he took their sons as his servants. He made the men work in the farms and in the fields till it was night, and had them rise before the rising of the sun to work the next day again. As the weeks and months passed, the people decided to poison their new king and reinstate their old king with his oversized belly and strangely big foot. However, when they went to the dungeon, their king with a heart of gold was dead. Nothing was left but his heart of gold, his big belly, oversized foot, and a letter that stated, "I forgive you. Moreover, I will rule over you once again if you give me your heart and let me rule." Some people rejected the letter in disbelief, but others received what was said and felt that he was alive and ruling in their lives. Jesus, according to Isaiah chapter 53 verse 2, had no beauty that we should desire him. As these people killed their king, similarly, we, with our sins, brought Jesus to the cross. Now if you receive him, he will forgive you and reign in your hearts just as the king with the big belly and oversized foot ruled the hearts of his people. Chapter 32 Chicken with Broth and Potatoes. Chicken with broth and potatoes. Once upon a time there was a poor family. They weren't the poorest, yet they ate the same thing every night, chicken with broth and potatoes. In their neighborhood, they lived as a very rich family. One day, the son and daughter of the poor family yelled out, "We are tired of this chicken with broth and potatoes every day, we're not going to eat dinner until we eat something else. We're going to check the neighborhood to see if they have anything better than chicken and potatoes." The father of the house said, "Wife, today they won't eat for being ungrateful." Thinking about what to do, the parents saw two other children beyond the window, looking in, and decided to invite them in to eat dinner. The children were so happy and very thankful. Seeing this, the son and daughter said, "We don't care." And they went from the house to search for anything better than chicken with broth and potatoes. They went next door. However, the next door family only had potatoes, no broth, no chicken. They tried the house next to that, but they only had one bean, which had to be divided into 4, and that certainly wasn't enough for 6. Then they tried 3 doors ahead, but the children there had empty plates with no food to eat. They just had a glass of water before they went to bed. The boy and girl said to themselves, "Let's go home and eat like kings. We have chicken with broth and potatoes." When they arrived home, they could smell the chicken with broth and potatoes. Looking in the window, they could see the 2 kids their parents had invited in, eat the last piece of chicken and potato. So they went inside the house to their rooms, crying with heavy tears. That same night, the father and mother had bought some ice cream and cake, which their kids hadn't seen. If they had been grateful for the chicken broth and potatoes from the very beginning, they could have had even better, but they were not grateful, so they had none. Let us not be ungrateful, for this leads us to miss out on many blessings. Chapter 33 Sisters. Sisters. Pick it up, said one sister to the other as the phone rang. When the call ended, she asked, "Who was it?" "It was our neighbor," said her sister. "He said that Jesus came to his house today to eat, and he is coming tomorrow to ours." The two sisters were pleased with the idea of meeting Jesus. "He's our king. How do you think he will dress?" asked one sister to the other. "Like a king, of course. Maybe in white or golden garments," responded the other. "Let's prepare the table for tomorrow." "Let's wear our Sunday's best," they both said. They prepared the table, bathed and dressed. It seemed tomorrow was already at the door. Finally, there was a knock on the door. The two sisters were excited. However, when they opened the door, it was two orphans. "Please, may we have something to eat? We smell your food and we are hungry," the orphans said. "No," answered both sisters, "and be gone with you. This food is for Jesus and not for you." As they closed the door, the two orphans left with tears in their eyes and blood-stained hands. "Filthy kids," said one sister to the other. "How dirty were their hands? Maybe they've been playing with red markers or paint." 15 minutes later, there was a second knock on their door. "Who is it?" asked one sister of the other. "It is a letter from the mailman," she answered. "What does it say? Is it a message from Jesus, the King?" "No. It's a prisoner asking for someone to visit him because he's lonely. I told you never to sign up for that program. If we go and visit him, we will miss Jesus who is coming, and won't that be a shame?" So they threw the letter in the trash, where it turned to blood and sweat. Then there came one more knock on the door. "Could this be him?" asked one sister to the other. "No, it is a widower. His wife died last year, and he wishes to see if he could come in and have something to drink. Tell him to be gone. We have an important visitor we are waiting for, and we cannot be seen with him." So the widower left with blood coming out of his shoes, and as he walked he left a trail, saying with a loud voice, "This is the last time I will try to visit you." As the sisters closed the door behind him, they said, "How dare he say what he said? And how dare he leave that stain in front of the house?" They grabbed the mop, cleaned up the blood, and then threw the mop away. They continued to wait for their king. The hours passed, but still Jesus did not arrive. When it was nearly midnight and the food had turned cold, there came a final knock at the door. "Do you think that is him?" A man dressed in white with gold rings in his fingers stood on the step. Immediately the sisters kissed his hands and said, "Come dine with us." As they ate, the man looked very pleased, even though the food was very cold. Without saying a word, he ate. And he laughed. "Jesus, is this Jesus?" the sisters asked between themselves. They called their neighbor to confirm. They asked, "What does Jesus look like?" The neighbor replied, "Like orphans in need of food, like the letter of a prisoner in need of a visitor, or like a widower in need of a drink." "You are joking," they said. "That's not Jesus. He is with us tonight." "Sister, hang up the phone. He is just pulling your leg." They went back to speak to their guest. As he continued to eat, they said, "You are Jesus." He said, "I am not." They were suddenly afraid. Then the man continued to speak, "When you kicked Jesus out, I came in, and I am taking you both tonight." So this is how the story ends. When you turn Jesus away, you welcome the devil in. Chapter 34 The Dog and the Dog Catcher. The Dog and the Dog Catcher. There was once a dog that could not be caught by any dog catcher. The dog was quick, smart, and tough. The dog catchers tried again and again to catch him, but had no luck. They'd all be sent to the hospital missing a leg, an arm, a tooth, or a toe. One day a new dog catcher arrived. He swore that he could catch the difficult dog, and he had faith that he would do so. The other dog catchers all laughed at him, saying, "You can't catch that dog." He replied, "I have hope." The new dog catcher went off to catch the dog. Everyone before him had always used force or attack to try and catch the dog, but the new catcher approached the animal with love in his heart and told him that he would make sure he had a better home. The dog believed him, as he saw peace in the man's eyes, which can only be given by God. So the catcher caught the dog. The pound was no surprise for the dog, as he'd been there before, but this time he was told by the catcher to have patience, as he would return to him with an owner. A day passed, but no new owner came. Another day passed, and still there was no new owner. People did visit the dog, but they all thought that he was just the ugliest dog they'd ever seen. But the dog remained patient, remembering the dog catcher's words and the peace of God in his eyes. Many days went by, turning into weeks until the day came when the other dog catchers decided it was time to put the unwanted dog to sleep. When they grabbed him to take him to the doctor to receive the fatal injection, the dog didn't struggle or bite. He didn't wish to hurt anyone because his new owners would dislike him. As the doctor opened his cage and he saw the needle waiting, the dog continued to believe in the dog catcher and hoped that his new master would arrive in time. Just as the needle was being prepped with the chemicals needed to kill the dog, a voice called out from the hallway, "Wait, I say wait." It was the dog catcher being faithful to his word. In many ways we are like that dog, and Jesus is the dog catcher we long for. Chapter 35: Searching and Finding. Searching and finding. 3 weeks following my wife's death, I took a volunteer job as a community chaplain in Kensington, the worst part of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. On the job, I prayed for addicts and spoke to them a little about Jesus. I also fed them and waited for the AR2 unit to take them to detox. One day, a mother came to me. She had traveled from Pittsburgh, which is about 4.5 hours from Philadelphia, and she carried with her a photograph of her son who was missing. He was around 19 or perhaps 20 years old, and she said that he'd been missing for a month and had last been seen in the Kensington area. I told her that I would help and go out looking for him after work, which I did. A couple of nights previously, a body had been found outside a nearby pharmacy parking lot, cut into pieces. The night before that, a woman had been strangled to death in the same area. I was keen to finding the missing man before anything bad happened to him, so feeling like a detective, I searched for him during my lunch breaks too. I asked known addicts and dealers if they'd seen him. None had. The first place I went was McPherson Park, which the drug addicts call it Needle Park, but us pastors calls it Prayer Park. The mayor of Philadelphia does not care for the Kensington part of Philadelphia. A couple of women said he looked cute. Someone did say that he might have been at AA, so I went there, but no one had seen him. I spoke to poor souls with the needle in the vein, and others who said they'd tie him up if they found him, and then let me know. Someone else said they thought they'd seen him, but his face was torn up, and he had red marks across his body like he was in bad shape. I couldn't give up, but I was tired and needed a rest. I called his mother, and I told her I was going to take an hour's break or two. It was the time of COVID, but in Philadelphia, nobody including me really wore a mask. So as I went home and was about to open the door, I saw a guy walking in front of my house. I decided to take a chance and show him the photograph, although I felt it was a long shot. I was probably wasting my time. But the guy also looked busted up with marks on his arms, so I thought he might be an addict and just might have seen our missing man. So I said, "Hey buddy, have you seen this guy?" He said, "That's me." So I called his mother, and she was so happy, she fell into tears. If I only knew the Lord was going to bring him in front of my house, I would not have walked for about 3 or 4 hours looking for him. But the Lord has his ways that are far beyond our understanding. After this event I caught COVID and was sick for 10 days, getting a fever of 104 to 105 the first day, but it was Rothet. After my recovery, I went looking for another missing person, this time hitting the streets at 5 a.m., interviewing many addicts but couldn't find the missing man. Chapter 36: The Boy and the Feather. The Boy and the Feather. I once saw a kid chasing a feather which the wind blew away. The closer he reached to it, the further the wind blew it away. As he thought, I have it in the tips of my fingers, the wind will blow it off the tips of his fingers. Higher and higher it flew away, the wind blew it, till it was seen no more. Finally, when all hopes of his ability was gone, it was time to pray. As the kid looked up and pointed to the thing he desired more than all this world combined, "This feather, Father, I desire, which you took away, in Jesus' name." And sobbing he said, "Let it be for thee, and I give it to thee, for it was never mine, since you took it away." As the tears went down his cheeks, he took his hands to wipe it down. On his hand it came down wet with the dew of that rain that came flowing down. Many times we chase things the wind seems to takes away, but if in that time we give it back to God, God, if he desires, will give it back to thee. Chapter 37: Contemplations of a Martyr Before His Death. Contemplations of a Martyr Before His Death. Dying for this world or dying for Christ, which path should I take? Should I die for something which shall fade and die? Or should I die for someone who is king of a kingdom that shall not fade away and be gone? Should I love because I feel it, and when it is gone, I shall love no more, or should I love because it is every Christian's duty to love? Should I accept this fate and die for he who died for me, or should I deny him and live a short time, even though I'd be lost forever in hell with chains and worms? Should I take this imprisonment where, although in chains, I am free as a dove flying to the heavens, when I pray to the one who I can love more than all? Or with one word shall I be free on the outside, but be imprisoned in the inside if I don't repent, and be waiting and thinking of the judgment to come from which there will be no escape? I will decide now. Oh, I love Christ. I love his grace and his laws and his people. Let me be. I fall to the ground with a kick from the guard. I see the floor. I hear the shot. I see the blood. I awake and see he who I've been waiting for. He has his arms open wide and hugs and kisses me and says, "Son, I've been waiting so long." I see the Son of God dancing for joy. I hear the shouts of the angels saying, "He is here, he is here." I hear clapping and praising from the saints saying, "Our brother is here." I see those who have gone before me, both old and young. I see the worship of God, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. I hear music, which can't be compared to anywhere but here. I feel no pain. I feel no tears. I see the garments white as snow. I see the crowns of gold. I feel no shame. I see the marks of the Son's hands and hear him saying, "It was worth every drop." Soon I will come to judge those on the earth, but now let's celebrate, my chosen one has come at last. Chapter 38: The White Robe. The White Robe. The following is a true story for all real Christians. 2 sinners will wear a robe and make it to glory, while a third would try the robe on only to condemn himself. The robe is the righteousness of Christ. A preacher asks, what could be done when one falls into the vilest of sins but go to the throne of grace, from which forgiveness flows like a river and cleans the vilest of sinners? A sinner replies, "Can his grace be enough for me?" Oh yes, it is enough. All that is needed is for a sinner to hate their sin, and desire to wear the robe which the Son of Righteousness has to offer. The robe is red. But when one puts it on, it becomes white, and makes the one who wears it as white as the robe. Can this whiteness be compared? No, it can't. Even snow does not compare to it, because the robe has the righteousness of the Son of God. But I have fallen into the vilest evil of sins. So come and wear the robe, it is your size. My sins are too much. The robe comes in extra infinity in size. Many sinners worse than you have worn it and are in glory, so why not you? But how much is this? I surely cannot afford such a robe. It has already been paid for, and you should not insult the buyer, for he has done it for his loved ones, of which if you are one. It was bought for you. He paid the price on the cross in Golgotha, where it was bought with blood. God came in flesh and blood and died for sinners. The Father accepted that payment, showing it by the resurrection on the third day. There is no reason why you should reject it. Give me this robe, and I will wear it. It was meant for me. I feel the cleanliness as I wear it. The blackness of sin is no more. Where are my stains? Where are the marks of my sins which were condemning me? Where is the accuser who, after tempting me, started accusing me? Your sins have been washed with the blood of the Lamb, and the accuser has fled. Christ Jesus has made you clean. You are as righteous as He is. His grace is enough, His grace is enough, grace, 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 how I love you with what Christ has given to me. The preacher then said, Come, there is a sinner who hates his sin. A second sinner said, If I could leave it, I would. I do not wish to do what I do. I hate sinning against a wonderful, holy, righteous God. I have a robe that you could wear that would cleanse you of your sins. But I can't afford it. I don't have the money. No need to worry, the Son of Righteousness has bought it just for you. O everyone who thirsts, come you to the waters, and he who has no money, come you buy and eat, yes, come buy wine and milk without money and price. Why do you spend money for that which is not bread, and labor for that which doesn't satisfy? Listen diligently to me and eat you that which is good, and let your soul delight yourself in fatness. Turn your ear and come to me here, and your soul shall live, and I will make an everlasting covenant with you, even the sure mercies of David. You mean it is freely given? Yes, freely given by He who justifies the ungodly. A question for you before you wear it, do you hate your sin? Oh, do I hate it with hatred that can't be compared. The robe is yours, wear it. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Oh yes, His grace is enough for a sinner like me. The preacher then asks, Is there anyone here who hates their sins? There is another sinner. Come to the fountain of grace, a robe is waiting for you, paid for by the Son of Righteousness if you hate your sin and desire to be cleansed from it. A third sinner answered saying, Oh no, I love my sin. I don't want to be cleansed. I want to wear the robe though, but then serve Him as I want. No, the robe would only condemn you and send you to the fires of hell. If there is no repentance or hatred for one's sins, then it is pointless to call Him Lord. Give me the robe. Oh, but what is this burning, and what is this worm making holes in my body? What is this blackness of night? Why is my sin coming before my mind, and continually reminding me that I have not repented and hated my sin, and not loved Jesus as my Lord and Savior? Ah, I'm in hell. Many are called, but few are chosen. Are you a sinner and hate your sin? I have a robe for you. It was bought for you, but beware, if you are a sinner and do not hate your sin, then this robe can't help you but only condemn you. Chapter 39 Jesus is our lawyer and judge. The Bible speaks of Jesus being both our judge and lawyer. John chapter 5 verse 22 and 1 John chapter 2 verse 1. Here is an illustration which explains this very thing. Jesus is our lawyer and judge. You are in a courtroom. You know that if you left on your own, you are doomed for life without any chance of parole. And you know that you are the one who committed the crimes, and you even told the lawyer of your guilt. You look at your lawyer and he tells you, Trust me. Everything will be all right. You see, he is very confident, and that he tells you not to be afraid that you would be off with no charges to your account. As you turn around for a second, your lawyer is nowhere in sight. You are scared. Then you are told that the lawyer who was so confident that you were to be off without charge is in prison, and sentenced to die for a crime he did not commit. You look in front of you and see the back of the judge as he sits on his chair. You expect to see a mean judge who has no mercy. And you have heard that those others before you weren't given a chance because they lacked what they could not supply, which only the one who had never committed a crime could give. Before the chair turns around, a person whispers in your ear, The lawyer has died. And fears come into your heart. And the chair is turned around. You look at the judge's hands and feet, for this judge wears no shoes. And his hands have no gloves. And you see the marks of being pierced as this man had recently been wounded, maybe to the point of death. For some reason, a calmness enters your soul even before you look at the judge's face. And as you look at his face, you stand in awe because the judge is actually the lawyer who had died for your crimes and had conquered the system which was against you. The accuser comes with a folder with over 1 million crimes you committed and hands it to the judge. The folder immediately becomes stained with his blood, and the papers inside become as white as snow with no marks on them to accuse you. And the judge states, "What crimes are against this lad? All is white, all is paid for. You are free." On hearing these words, you fall on your knees and worship toward the judge. Chapter 40 at Christian Inner Battles. In a life of a Christian. For he or she is a saint and sinner at the same time. We are saints due to our relationship with Jesus. All the saints greet you. 2 Cor 13:13 NKJV. And we are sinners due to our fallen nature, who wants to go after sin. This is a faithful saying and worthy of all acceptance, that Christ Jesus came into the world to save sinners, of whom I am chief. 1 Tim 1:15 NKJV. I have an illustration I wrote some time ago. A Christian's Inner Battles. Close your eyes and imagine a house where a new baby, the seed, the new man in Christ, is just born into. This house is your body. This house has a person who already was occupying it. He was ruling its members, and he won't let go of his position without a fight. He is called the old man, old nature, or sinful nature. He runs the house without any rules and order. He dirties the place and lacks discipline. Though the baby is not strong enough to put him out, he has the strength to ruin many of his plans because the Holy Spirit dwells in this lad. When this baby prays, fasts, sings rhymes, breaks night fellowship, and reads the word, things begin to happen. Those of the house listen to the baby except for the old man, who often resists or steps out for a smoke. But when this old man tells dirty jokes, smokes, drinks beer, lusts, and kills, those who are in the house listens to him except for the baby, who tries with all his strength to resist him. One day the baby grows up just a little and defeats this old man, and this old man seems to have died. However, this is a day-by-day battle, which makes us feel to be victorious over sin when a Christian overcomes a temptation for a day or a time. But this devilish old man can't die till the day when the house which belongs to the new man in Christ is rebuilt, as it is the promise of the brother, Jesus, of the new man that it will. So the old man regains his strength and takes his rulership over and over again. At times it binds the baby with chains of steel. So he can't move but begins to cry out as the sins are committed in his house. This we could say when after a long time of victory over sin, we fall into the old habits of sin again. And as we do them, we feel grief in our hearts. Hence the battle continues for rulership, the flesh against the spirit and the spirit against the flesh. So those of the house do what they do not want to. One wants holiness, the other sin. When one makes progress in holiness, the relapse comes again. The house even begins to cry out, "Who will deliver me from this body of death?" When the house is dirty, it is not the baby, the seed, the new man. It is the old man who is our old nature. And when the house is clean, it is not old man, the sinful nature. It is the baby. This is a Christian's daily life. Two are born into this house, and the older will serve the younger. And that is what the older does not want. He wants to remain the king of the house, but his time will come to an end, and we can joyfully say at the Christian's future judgment, all this will take place. Even if the house is destroyed, it will rise again. This old man is like cancer who lives as long as the person is alive, but once the person dies, this old man dies with it. But this house will rise again when the older brother of the new man comes to rebuild houses and restore the baby to his own house. The old man will die for good and lose his power forever over the house, and the baby will be king over his own house, where holiness will be the only rule of the house. Chapter 41 The Battle is Won. The battle is won. A saint went to pray, thinking he was defeated, then discovered that he had won the war. He said, "I have fallen in sin, what shall I do? Shall I stay down and leave the walk he has ordained me to walk? Shall I rise back up on my feet, knowing Jesus has forgiven me? His blood has cleansed me and made me whiter than snow, and his Spirit will lift me from the dirt to the third heaven. To God I will confess and tell him what I have done. I will pray harder and read the word more. I will be careful of where I step on the path. Shall I think of what shall happen if I fall again? He has told me not to worry about tomorrow. Shall it be on my mind? Then another saint of God fell on his face before the Lord, weeping and mourning like a defeated man. And he said, Lord, I don't wish to leave you, but I'm scared I might. At that same moment he heard a voice telling him, Believe that you already won the battle. He replied, But I have not won. I still feel tempted. I still have a nature that goes against everything I believe. I fall many times. I'm always crying for deliverance and asking your blood to cleanse me and forgive me. The voice said, You won the battle. He replied, But how did I win? Are you not part of his body, the church? Yes, I am. Jesus won the battle 2,000 years ago. How can he win and not the body he carries, which is his church? The saint replied, All of this is true, but why must I still carry my cross and fight this temptation if I already won? Know that the devil and sin are defeated, and Hell's Gate is under attack. Do you expect Hell's Gate not to defend itself when it is attacked? You are thinking that you are defending when you are really attacking. Do you see? The saint thought for a while but still couldn't understand. The voice continued, The fight is not yours. When you fast, pray, read the word, witness to others, fellowship and fight and resist temptation, is it not I, the Holy Spirit, who is doing it through your body? Did I not start working within you? Will I not finish it? Would Jesus start something he had no intention of finishing? If you won the battle, why would you think you lost? If you are attacking, how come you think you are defending? I am with you and in you. You are my temple and my workshop. I am building and only destroying those things that shall perish in this world. Don't fear, you have been in my book of life before the foundation of the world. You will finish this course and not leave my path. I have ordained that it is so. The dear saint stood up. From that moment, he never again worried about winning a battle that had been already won. He went on to serve the Lord into old age when at age 82 he opened his arms and said, Lord, receive what is yours, for you have said this battle is won and you surely have won it. With that he closed his eyes, breathed his last and left for his home.